Hi everyone, welcome to the Inner Reset talk show. My name is Semal. This is a talk show about bold choices, deep learnings, and charting your own unique course through life.
So as my technicals grew, my emotional capacity and sort of wisdom didn't grow with it. And then suddenly this pure OCD started rising up in me, which was at around 18, 19. Pure OCD is it's like the mind is afraid of itself. From what I've researched as well, some people have the fear that if there's a knife and a baby, they could literally think about killing the baby. And then they can't decipher thought versus what their actual intentions are.
Anish has been building businesses since he was 6 years old, with his first business scaling at just 13 years of age. By the age of 15, his digital products had been sold to 70 countries with 350,000 plus downloads. What's really amazing about Anish is that he's been really vocal about some difficulties he had with Pure OCD, and also talked about how this stemmed from something which we all face today, which is connecting our self-worth with our outer success. Welcome, Anish. You spoke a lot about self-worth and how your parents were really successful, so you almost felt like you had to match them, and how you equated that with success.
I think there's something that we have to sort of consider in this is the fact that, we come from Sri Lanka, right? It's not like France where I lived and everything, and our values are very different. It's like, I would go to a family gathering and they're like, who did you beat? Who did you win? Did you win your matches? Rather than how are you feeling? What's next? What are your plans? Rather than facilitating individual thoughts, a tennis player, it's like, or a professional, it's like, who is this individual versus what is this person's achievements, right? So that sort of fostered this fear of mistakes, fear of failure. So that's the struggle part, right? So the fear, and that basically was what I think ended my career. I couldn't muster up the courage internally to have the perspective to sort of defend that part out. But what ended up happening was I started attaching my identity and my self-worth to my achievements, right? I beat this player. I beat this player in a practice match or something. And it doesn't even count, right? It doesn't matter. It's just about enjoying the sport and those types of things. And that's what you will excel when you can truly excel. And I remember, I had such a big roller coaster in my career where I would perform well and then just slump down. And because I got the achievements, suddenly I need to keep up those achievements. And then my brain goes haywire. And then I start overtraining myself, and then it just goes sideways. And I don't think I had the right emotional support to make myself feel safe, to just be me almost.
And so how did you first recognize that was the issue? Because first of all, we don't even recognize that, hey, that's the thing that's wrong.
What ended up happening, because I feel like, I push things through. I'm kind of high functioning. I love the work and everything. So as my technicals grew, my emotional capacity and sort of wisdom didn't grow with it, right? And my lack of emotional support, lack of the right people around me, it didn't grow with my technicality. So what ended up happening was that I had a complete mental breakdown where my mind self-imploded. It literally, I was having a lot more thoughts, a lot more strategic thoughts. And then suddenly this pure OCD started rising up in me, which was at around 18, 19, right? And it's basically pure OCD has been associated by psychotherapists as abandonment issues. So it's one of the big causes of it is abandonment issues. So the fact that I've never been accepted for me. And then basically I deem myself as this horrible person. Every action I take becomes this horrible burden for society. And it's a bit of an entitled thing, right? But what caused that was this whole thing about you have to achieve this, you need to be this, you need to be that. So me as a person never worked for anyone. So every action I take is wrong. And, we all have that burning desire to sort of fit into society a little bit without going on a sort of a different route, right? So that triggered, it got worse and worse. And that forced me down this route of trying to figure out what was going wrong, right? This Pure OCD, because if it was like mild, if it was like not a big problem, I wouldn't have attended to it. But it was so bad that I couldn't read, I couldn't write, I had to lock myself in my room. I didn't tell anyone. I tried telling therapists, I tried telling doctors about it. No, it was very sort of, it's not many people know about it. It's only like 5% of people with OCD have this. And it took me years to even find the right label for it. Pure OCD is like this concept of, like, it's like the mind is afraid of itself. So it's weird, like, so like I would be afraid that my mind could think and go down this path when I wanted to go this path, right? And so like a sense of control, like OCD, physical control. This is mind control almost, right? And then what ends up happening is if like one thought goes the wrong direction, and I know it's kind of wrong, which is this control issue, then I would try and control it back, right? And then suddenly I could do it initially, and then suddenly it became worse and worse to the point where it would just go down that path. And it'll, like, say I say one thing in my head, it'll just reoccur for like a good few hours. And then it's like an anxiety attack that I would have to recover from. It can take a week, or if it's really bad, it'll just keep going. Like next day, small things would trigger it, and you can't really function. Right? It was really bad, really bad. So that's an example. So you could, like, for example, from what I've researched as well, some people have the fear that if there's a knife and a baby, they could literally think about, killing the baby, and then it would just literally they would think that they can't decipher thought versus what their actual intentions are, right? So but I have not had anything like that happen for the last year almost now. I've really recovered from it. So so how this whole happened was, it was getting bad. I couldn't even socialize. So that was literally, I was hopeless, right? I was like, done. My mind's gone. And then, so that triggered me down this path. Luckily, I could muster up the courage to go down the path of figuring out what was going wrong. And that put me on this path of trying to understand the mind. And that's what led me to this whole self-worth and these types of concepts.
And then with self-worth, like what is your stance on self-worth now? Like, how do you approach this whole topic now?
Self-worth, I guess, giving ourselves the time and the space of mind to be like, I need this, or I deserve this, right? I think when people are just pushing things onto you need to be this and that, we don't take time to be like, I deserve this, right? I deserve to be a human being. I deserve to do that. I deserve to have an emotional thing. I deserve to accidentally hurt someone and apologize. Those types of things that, are human to us, like very human related things. We're not robots, I think, is what self-worth needs to sort of be. It's like giving yourself freedom to be a human being. And I think if we can truly embrace our humanity, self-worth sort of kicks into place. But if we're in a place that does not embrace humanity, then we naturally don't associate ourselves to this ability to, be a human being. And that sort of demeans our self-worth. So the more we surround ourselves with sort of the norm being entitled a little bit, almost like, I deserve this and you can't take it away from me. And it's almost like entitled. But I think that's sort of a sensation of self-worth, right? It's like, okay, but, you can be a bit bratty about it, but it's also in a way we kind of need that to feel human.
How would you define radical acceptance, and what has your journey been with, this term radical acceptance? It's like
I have a couple of answers to this actually. Radical acceptance, the weird thing is we can have radical acceptance of ourselves in the present moment. Like if you're playing a game or if you're watching Netflix, we are and we have these weird thoughts no one else has, and we can allow those thoughts to happen without judgment. That is a little bit of that radical acceptance of yourself. But what happens is when you enter society, all this influence sort of destroys that, right? And to live in society when we all have these very human, very like, how do you say, what's considered obscene thoughts or obscene things, like you can't say these things, like those types of things, if it seeps into our personal life, into our mind, into our alone time, into our me time, that's when the world just caves in, and you can't function in both personal life and outside life, right? So what I've learned to be able to have this ability to be myself outside and also way more myself in my personal life is like a big balance. It's like I need to, I'm very strict on me time. Like me time is where I can be ridiculous, stupid, play the guitar the way I like without feeling judged. The way I practice guitar, if anyone listens to that, they would want to rip their ears out. Because I'm practicing the same thing over and over again a million times. And I would say a million other guitarists would be like, that's the wrong way. But I need this. This is me, so that when I go outside in society, I know I have accepted my stupidities. But now other people definitely won't. So what is the next step? Because I think that's the biggest part, right? When you have society that's not evolved in the context of accepting humanity versus some other places that are way more accepting, what do? I think that is the next step. And what I've learned there is I need to get me time balanced. And then when I go outside, I need to have my technical mind balanced. I need to know how to debate or negotiate or be in a place of not getting defensive, or be in a place that I'm aligned in a way that accommodates irrationality, accommodates people who have very strong identities that can just, run you over. But I got me time. You got that little safe space for yourself, right? Whatever it is, it could be friends, but from my experience a little bit, it can be a bit challenging here at times to find those safe spaces. But yeah, so I think one of the best things we can do for ourselves to get that self-worth, inside our minds and outside when we go into society, is really that me time, and being able to be alone, that's where creativeness happens, just inventiveness and inspiration and being human, failing. Like, I think like every child born to on this planet, they learn, you can learn to speak 3 languages and think it's a normal thing, right? For us as adults, like, whoa. And we just lose that creativeness because of this social sort of imposements, if that makes sense. And and suddenly when we can be alone in our minds, creativity, being like a child again, just happens, if that makes sense. Yeah. I went and saw this yoga guru, and, he said, okay, so he put me down and sort of meditate, right? I was meditating, and there was a key difference in the way he was teaching meditation. It was like, if you have weird thoughts, by the way, he was in private equities, and he became like full-time yoga guru, right? So, and he said, if you have judging thoughts, if you have anything, just blurt it out, just have it in your head and just let it flow. The first day it was horrible. I couldn't meditate for 5 seconds. It was just like, right? Then the second, and he said, no, keep going, let those thoughts flow through it. Second day, third day, fourth day, suddenly my mind became so calm, and I started enjoying those thoughts, whatever come in. And fifth day was like just clarity. I could literally have an outer body experience almost. And it's almost like we haven't, in society these days, we haven't given our minds the freedom to literally just have thoughts flowing, and we just bottleneck it, and it becomes things like pure OCD and ADHD, and these things aggravate. So after that was when I had my recovery journey. It was like, that was one of my key pivoting points. Yeah.
You talked about having me time is super important, which I think is really important. And as an entrepreneur, I know a lot of the times you're spending like 15, 16 hours working. So how do you balance your me time with hours working?
There are some trigger points I actively look for. If I am having meetings all day and I'm just nibbling on food, like all the time, and I'm not pausing everything and eating the food, it eventually becomes into stress eating. It always ends up stress eating. I had fluctuating weight for like so long, but now if I have food, I wait till my meetings are done, or I reduce the meetings or something, or find a slot that I can sit down, ignore everything and have a meal that I enjoy, right? That's me time, right? Those little things are what's going to ground us for the long term to create resilience. Because if we start detesting everything, every aspect of our lives, and we push it away, including the biological things like eating and enjoying eating because we need to eat, that's when we start transitioning down the path of like, those things I don't have time for. I'm just going to eat it quickly. And I'm not looking at the bigger picture of what life is about. So now challenges that come in are just going to be like, I can't handle this. This is like, it's suddenly you're like, this is not part of the human experience to have a problem, right? So me time prepares us for long term, prepares us for the problems that life is going to throw at us because it becomes normal for us, right? And because we're embracing humanity as a whole in that me time period, it's like, problems happen. Like, okay, so some tragedy happens. We have to learn to like be like, this is part of the human experience. And if you can't embrace the good parts of the human experience, how can we embrace sort of the bad parts that happen? So, I mean, there's a logical sort of reasoning of why I give me time. I kind of have a logical mind, so I need to like put it into that perspective so that I do it. Yeah, I have to do it that way. I mean, as a kid, I was just logical as hell. And I think end game logic is actually to be emotional, and end game control is to be actually not controlling things. So, but yeah, so me time, the other things I do is like, you know, these days has been challenging. You know, we had a bit of a, like, say some things happen, right? And it's like client or whatever it is. And there's a level of uncertainty. I try and enjoy my meal, but it's uncertainty, you know, those things, it's very challenging to navigate. I think that's what I'm working on now is when there's uncertainty, how do I disconnect the mind? How do I disconnect the ego and just focus on the present, right? And if we are doing me time and we're not present, that is actually not me time. If you're not looking at stuff in wonder, like we watch like a lot of binge Netflix, some people would binge Netflix and they would not even be present. It's like just this complete disconnect. It's like, can we observe this and just take it in as like as its full glory or whatever? And it almost makes us feel drained and completely disconnected from our humanity. So another thing why I think it's important is because then I can see the bigger picture, and then I love learning. So when I start learning, it's giving my full attention, and it's getting my full sense of joy around when I'm learning that thing. And suddenly my ego disconnects, because if I'm working hard at something, my ego gets attached to it. It's like someone says, your work is bad. So I'm like, no, I work so hard for this. What's wrong with you? Like, da. But if I enjoy it, I'm like, oh, really? Oh, I didn't think so, but okay. It becomes way more like you don't associate your identity to it. So that's why I think for the long term to create resilience, me time is huge for any entrepreneur, anyone who's in it for the long game.
So then you said that once you get your trigger points, like you're binge eating or you're stressed out, do you just like be like, okay, that's it, I need my me time, I'll cancel the next meeting and have 2 hours, or how do you usually do it?
I'm getting better at this. I'm still figuring it out. Okay. But let's say that, you know, in entrepreneur journeys and when you're building things, there's so many problems that happen. And that's, I think at times we just gotta stick through it, even though it's not enjoyable. And, you know, but we can get more resilient, and we can be aware of this happening where, you know, I actually might have stress eaten maybe yesterday, and I think I did, right? So, and I'm just aware that it's happening. And it's all we can do, because otherwise the other things fall apart. We affect people's lives and all these other things. So we kind of have to suck it up a little bit, but be aware of it. And that's all you can do. You know, some people might be in a more privileged position, might not be, but it's part of the journey. And if you can't enjoy it, then if you can't be enjoyed or be aware of what's happening, then that's when it can go sideways.
I feel like almost like, you know, as an entrepreneur, like there's so much that you can do. And like, especially even when I was there, I had this thing of, oh, I want to do this and I want to do that. I want to try this. And then you suddenly have a full plate and then you're like overworking yourself. What has your experience been with that?
Yeah. I get that. Like, we want to do all these random things. I mean, that's more of a visionary, right? A visionary concept. Like if I was to actually apply that into my life, I kind of observed it, you know, in a different context very recently, where, when I'm being very visionary, it's like, got to do this and that and this. It's actually when I have not embraced the present sometimes, and not found a balance between visionary Anish, which loves to venture in the future because whatever it is, and the Anish that loves being in the present. Right? I ventured so far in the visionary context that I could like predict things and all this stuff, but now that Anish is so hard to deal with because it's like it's so hard to please him. It's so hard to do anything with him. It's so hard to manage people with him. It's just like, it doesn't work in a lot of present context. So what I do now to really focus on long-term being a business manager as well, and rather than just visionary, is I bring myself to the present and say, let me enjoy the details here. Let me stop enjoying going into the vision because I'm unhappy with some of the work we've done or something, right? I'm always unhappy, but I need to balance that for my well-being and also the team's well-being. So that was very crucial for me, learning to come down and be aware of the changes that are happening in the mind during this calm down period to ground level. And then I can always be aware when I'm pushing myself back up there. And then suddenly these little things that I need to push forward in and these very specific focuses, I can push forward in because it's now like, I love this. Like, this is my details. These are the things that I want to do right now. And it's like, now it's a very different mindset. It's less accommodating of mistakes, maybe less accommodating of ideas and all these things, but it's necessary for pursuit of one sort of vertical or whatever. Visionaries are going to try everything and just be disruptive and all this stuff, which I do have as well. I think too much, and that's what I had to learn to balance out. Secret ingredient there, I think, is joy in the present moment. If I was to just elaborate a bit, like in the future, like the only thing that's creating the future is your mind. It's not all your senses. It's the mind that's creating it. So I think we can only truly find radical joy in the present, and that's what I focused on for me to be like, okay. But sometimes the mind likes to wander, so that's when we're really safe. So yeah, like I've seen a couple of people like talk about if it doesn't fit your identity, then okay, whatever. But here's the thing, I feel like we are naturally born to pursue, like, if you put a seed in the ground, it's going to grow into a tree, right? You just have to nurture the soil. You have to make sure that's happening. You can't yell at the seed to grow, right? One thing that I found was that I used to really excel as a kid in challenges, like so well all the time. And suddenly a challenge became very like, oh, this is outside my identity or something like that. So like, and now when I started focusing on enjoying the challenges as well, suddenly I'm excelling again. And I think, that's really the key, to be present and still excel and become like something big or whatever it is if you can truly start approaching those challenges in a new context of, rather than it's a challenge, we just got to push through it. Rather than that, it's a challenge. How am I going to navigate my mind to enjoy this new challenge? How am I going to pace myself out for the long term to enjoy this challenge? And if you succeed at enjoying the challenge, you're going to be going long term.
The experience of inner transformation is not the same for everyone, but the impact it has will be with you for the rest of your life, metamorphosing you into a truer, more authentic version of yourself. The Inner Reset is brought to you by HomeTree Coworking, a co-working space I co-founded. HomeTree is Sri Lanka's first co-working space dedicated to mindfulness at work. At HomeTree, we aim to reinvent the way we work in the post-pandemic world by focusing on consciousness, community, and co-creation in the new normal. We're trying out a range of ways to bring mindfulness into how we work. One of them is through online deep work sprints, where we combine mindfulness techniques with productivity science to help us get better at what we do and to help us do our best work. More importantly, HomeTree is an ever-growing community of creatives, entrepreneurs, and change makers who support each other in co-creating their wildest dreams. At HomeTree, we take pride in aspiring towards a new world of work, where your inner being directs what you do in the outer world. To find out about our latest programs, you can go to our Instagram page.